In this video, I'm going to run through the supplies you need for the Mandala course. Remember to use what you have. You don't need to go out and buy a load of stuff. One of the most important things you do need is a good pair of compasses. I really like this pair by Rotring. It's better to get one that's got its own pencil lead. You can get some that have got, this is an adapter which fits on there, but you can get some compasses that just have the adapter to put your own pencil in. I don't find those as accurate. This has got an extending arm, which is useful if you want to draw really big circles, which I do from time to time. You can get cheaper versions. This is a partner's one, which works just as well. It's got its own lead, quite stiff, so it doesn't lose its radius. And that's compasses. Another thing you need is a good pencil. I really like mechanical pencils, like this one is also Rotring, just happens to be one that I have. They've got their own lead, you don't need to keep sharpening them, but if you don't have a mechanical pencil you can use a 2B. Just make sure you keep it nice and sharp. You'll probably need an eraser if you're anything like me. I like this soft one by Derwent. It's just a lot easier to use and it doesn't ruin your paper. You will need some kind of ruler or straight edge. I quite often use one like this because it's just a bit smaller. I find this one a bit cumbersome sometimes, but I do love the very straight edge that it's got. You will need a fine black pen. I quite often use these ones, Stapler pigment liners. I would suggest going for a 0.1 size. This one is a set that comes in different sizes. You get one that's finer than this, which is good for detail, and you get ones that are much thicker. The 0.8 is the thickest one. This is the 0.1 that I suggest you get one similar. So you get a nice fine line. Other pens, similar pens are the Pitt pens by Faber-Castell. You can also get a set of a lot of different sizes, and they have an S, which is, I think, their equivalent of the 0.1. You can see it's very similar to that one. I also really like these Micron pens by Pigma. This is purple, but they do come in all colours. They're really nice to work with. There are others as well. This is Derwent's version, 0.1, Graphic Line Maker by Derwent. This is also a set of different sizes. So that's the fine black pen. You'll also probably want to get something that's a bit thicker. Now this one I really like by Pentel. It's got a nice soft nib, so you can actually draw thinner lines and thicker lines. You can do a bit of colouring in if you want a black section. And they're really nice. I also quite often use the Uniball I fine pens. I think this is a 0.7. These are lovely for writing and drawing and everything, really. You can use Sharpies. This is a cheaper version of a Sharpie. I just find it's a bit too thick and it tends to bleed. This is just sketchbook paper and you can see slight bleeding of the pigment. So that's pens. Now at some point you'll want to start using colour with your mandalas, possibly even straight away. So one of my favourite colouring tools are these Tombow pens. They're water soluble. Just get a piece of scrap watercolour paper. So you lay your pigment down, and then this is a water pen, but you can use a paintbrush with water. And when you add the water, it turns it into watercolour basically. And you get these lovely vivid colours. So I like to use those. If you're using water soluble media, you'll need a paintbrush. This is just an ordinary watercolour paintbrush. You might want to use watercolour pencils. Again, you can use them just as they are, or you can add water and they turn into watercolour paint basically in a similar way. You can use ordinary coloured pencils. These are a really nice set by Prismacolor. They're very soft, which means that they blend very well together. So if we pick two similar colours, you can blend them really nicely. You could also use watercolour paints, or you could use acrylic paints, but at the size we're going to be doing quite small mandalas and you might find acrylic paints just a bit too much. I would suggest something more like watercolours or pencils or these type of watercolour pens. I also have a set of jelly roll pens, which work best actually on black paper if you want to do some mandalas on black paper. These are lovely and they give really vivid colours. They're quite nice on white paper too. So I have a couple of sketchbooks that I use for mandalas. This is a small one. They're both square, so I just find that better. Just experiment in here. But the paper's good enough that it will take a bit of water. Same with this one. This is just a bigger version and I want to go a bit bigger. Again, lots of experimentation in there. When I want to work on paper, usually use watercolour paper. This is some by, I won't try and pronounce that name, Harmony Watercolour. £140 is a good thickness because it will take lots of water. This was hot pressed, which means it's smooth. You can use cold pressed, which is the more textured version, but I prefer the smoother ones. Also by Langton watercolour paper by De La Rowney, very similar to this one, £140. This is a bigger size. I do like to cut my paper into a square when I'm working with mandalas, and I'll show you how to do that in a separate video. The other paper I like to use for mandalas is Bristol paper. This one by Canson is a quite affordable one. You see it's really white. I don't know if you can see well in this, compared with the more creamy colour of the watercolour paper. Bristol paper is very, very smooth. It's almost like card. So that's great for using pens, marker pens, that sort of thing. I wouldn't use water on this though, because it's non-absorbent, it won't take the water very well. So get your supplies ready and let's move on.